All right, good day, everyone. Welcome again to the APN Festival, where we have a designated theme in each month to cover the key topics relating to the Asia Pacific Network. So from 1st of June, we started this event with net zero solutions around the world in 24 hours. We had 32 organizations sharing their latest net zero solutions around the clock. So in July and August, we had the theme of health and well-being, also the resources and circularity. We have collected valuable case studies and knowledges from our panel of experts in our network. So for more info about our Asia Pacific Festival, you may refer to all the webinars recordings in our YouTube playlist. So I'll be putting in later. So in September, we had our annual event, which was the World Green Building Week. And this year, the theme is #Building for Everyone, as recent global shocks have taught us that the importance of community and the consequences of human impact on the world we live in. So you may refer to the World Green Building Council event page for the Green Building Councils who have participated in the World Green Building Week. So October will be the last themed month in the APN Festival, as we will be showcasing the APN Award finalists and also broadcasting our APN Awards in November. So in this October, we are going to focus on the topic of green finance. So green finance is really the top voted topic in the Asia Pacific region during our annual member value survey, which reflects the need and also the urgency to explore the connection between finance and also the building industry. So of course, who doesn't like to have more money? But the question here is how the money should be used for the right purpose, generating the right result for the society. At the same time, how the industry can collaborate with the financial institute to work together for the best result. So in addition, what else do we need to know more of, or what we don't know, So today we have invited some panels of experts to unpack more regarding this theme. So the first one we have is Dr. Stephen. So he is the director of the Europe Regional Network from the World Green Building Council. So Stephen, how are you?
Good morning, good afternoon.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, Joy. It's a great pleasure to join you to speak on this really important topic. I'm going to share a little bit about what the Europe Regional Network of World Green Building Council has been doing on sustainable finance, and particularly focus on something called the EU taxonomy, which is a tool in the EU policy framework now that is designed to reorient capital flows towards more sustainable investments. And I'm going to be trying to answer this question of can this tool, this taxonomy, really help to decarbonize the building sector? So if you could flick onto the next slide, just a brief introduction to myself and the Europe Network for those not so familiar. The Europe Network is a network of 23 national green building councils. We have a combined membership across those 23 councils of about 5,000 companies and organizations, academic institutions, cities, many different stakeholders, all the way from the demand side, including investors and pension funds, all the way through the professional services, delivery, and the supply chain as well. So very broad representation across the region. And we're supported by 8 regional partners that you can see in the bottom 2 rows of logos on this slide. I'm director of the network, as Joy said. That means that I coordinate the work of these councils to try and help them to collaborate. I have a background in engineering. I'm an engineer, and I've also been working on this topic of sustainable finance for a number of years. I joined the World Green Building Council about 5 years ago to lead a project on green mortgages. So I want to start just with a little bit of context. I'm sure this is not new information for most of you listening, but the sector, the construction sector, the real estate sector, has a very significant environmental impact. We all know this, but it sometimes helps to just put it into context and to see the scale. And I think this is a great image to do that, to help us, to help remind us of the impact that the sector has. And here you can see some of the most consumed materials, not only in our sector, but in terms of the entire global consumption. Cement is obviously mostly used to produce concrete. Concrete is the material that humans consume most of in terms of man-made materials. And in fact, in terms of our entire consumption, the only thing we consume more of is water. If you were to put the cube on this image to represent concrete, it would be 10 times bigger than the cube for cement. So a huge amount of resources used by our sector, and that obviously has impacts in terms of climate change, it has impacts in terms of resource depletion, and it has impacts in terms of biodiversity. And the EU taxonomy is a tool to try and help us reduce those impacts and ensure that the capital that is available, the capital that is invested day in, day out in our economies, is being reoriented towards more sustainable investments. So what is the EU taxonomy? It's a classification system. So it's described as an inventory here, an inventory for the future. So a tool that will help companies and financial institutions to understand what are environmentally sustainable activities. And as such, it also enables reporting. So it's a tool that allows companies to report where their activities are aligned with the taxonomy criteria, and in that way helps to facilitate more consistent ESG reporting. So ESG being environmental, social, and governance, and is a sort of a broad term to capture this kind of sustainable finance agenda. It's also designed in a way to allow it to be a transition tool. And by that, we mean a tool that will allow companies to report how, over time, they are progressing towards becoming more sustainable, and for investors to evaluate that. And it does that by, or the way that works is that when companies report, they report against 3 KPIs. So they report the alignment of their capital expenditure, their CapEx, their operational expenditure, their OpEx, and their turnover. And when you look at the alignment of a company's CapEx, you can see where they're investing and how that investment is going into more sustainable capital expenditure. And hopefully over time, as they invest more in capital expenditure, that will have an impact on how aligned their turnover and operational expenditure will be. So we can see how over time companies transition by looking at those 3 KPIs. The taxonomy it's set out in EU law, so it is part of the legal framework, but it's not mandatory. It's a requirement that companies report against it, but it's not a requirement that they are aligned to it. So they can report 0 alignment if that's what they want to do. If that's all they can achieve, then they must report that. And hopefully over time that alignment will increase as they report. And the criteria of this classification system are intended to be evidence and science-based. So they're developed by a group of sectoral and scientific experts. And the World Green Building Council was part of that group over the last 2 years, helping to lead the development of the criteria for the built environment. And perhaps most importantly, the taxonomy is dynamic. And what we mean by that is it's due to be revised over the coming years to keep pace with the knowledge and the science and the best practice. So the criteria that have been developed must be reviewed at least every 3 years to ensure that they are still fit for purpose, that they're still ambitious enough, and if not, then they will be adjusted and revised to ensure they keep pace. And the taxonomy is very broad. It's in many ways a really ambitious attempt by the European Union to address this sustainable finance agenda and create alignment within the policy framework. It covers 6 environmental objectives. So it's not just about climate change, it's not just about carbon emissions. It also addresses climate adaptation, it addresses circular economy, pollution, water, and biodiversity, or at least it will do over time as it's being developed. So it's still in the development phase. And at the moment, what we have is an act, a legal act called a delegated act that has been developed for the climate criteria, so climate mitigation and adaptation. So those criteria are embedded in the EU legal framework now, and companies can use them, and indeed large companies are required to report against them now. And over the last 2 years, World Green Building Council and myself and members of the European network have been working on developing criteria for circularity. So one of these objectives 3 to 6, as they've come to be called. And we've also been looking at biodiversity, although that's not yet. That work is still underway. So now we've produced recommendations on criteria for circular economy, and I'll share a little bit of the detail of those in a moment. The taxonomy working group, this expert group that's been set up, it's known as the EU Platform on Sustainable Finance, and it has a subgroup within it called the TWG, the Technical Working Group, which was this group of experts working on the criteria, and we were represented and were in fact chairing the team leading the work on construction and buildings. But just to show you the breadth of what's going on here, there were teams working on all of these other sectors, so transport, energy, mining, manufacturing. And as you can imagine, some of those criteria are relevant for our sector. So criteria on mining, for example, will have an impact on the supply chain, similarly for criteria on manufacturing. So once the next piece of work that we've just been leading on circular economy is completed, what that will mean is that then companies in the sector will be able to choose between the climate mitigation criteria, the climate adaptation criteria, or the circularity criteria. So the taxonomy framework allows a company to consider its expenditure as aligned if it makes a substantial contribution, so it meets a certain set of criteria for one of these 6 objectives. But then in addition to that, they have to meet a slightly lower set of criteria called the do no significant harm criteria against all of the other 6. So in practice, if I have a building and I want to report it as taxonomy aligned, then I can choose, if I'm choosing climate, I need to make sure the building is meeting these substantial contribution criteria for climate mitigation. But then I have to also make sure it's not doing significant harm around circular economy, around pollution, around water, and there are a separate set of criteria for those objectives. And in practice, what we find is that actually those do no significant harm criteria can be more difficult to meet than the substantial contribution aspects, simply because the data is quite difficult to get hold of. So the taxonomy is very broad, it is quite complicated, and what we're finding is that companies, especially smaller companies, are, I think it's fair to say, are struggling and probably need some more support to ensure that the framework is usable. I'll briefly touch on a little bit of the detail of what the criteria look like. So here you can see the criteria for climate mitigation. You can see there are different criteria for new buildings, for renovation, and also for purchasing or acquiring buildings. On new construction, it relates to essentially just going beyond the regulation for energy performance, an improvement of 10%. On renovations, an improvement on the building's performance in terms of primary energy is required of 30%. And for acquisition and ownership, you have different criteria depending on how new the building is. If it's a very new building, you have to meet those new construction criteria. If it's an existing building, then it's based on the Energy Performance Certificate, which is a framework that exists across all European countries. And on circularity, which is conceptually a slightly more complex topic, we can't sort of simplify it down to a few simple metrics like energy and carbon. So with circularity, we have a combination of quantitative and qualitative criteria. There's criteria around diverting waste from landfill. There's criteria in terms of the materials coming onto the site for the new building or for the renovation, where we're saying there needs to be a percentage of reused materials, a percentage of recycled materials, and a percentage of renewable or bio-based materials. And those are combined then with some qualitative criteria. And for the sake of time, I won't read the slide, but I'm sure the slides will be shared with you. And there's obviously all of the detail can be found in the taxonomy documentation. Our network has sort of recognised the challenge that the sector faces, and many of the green building councils in the region have been undertaking work to support their members to implement the taxonomy. Just one example of that is a study here from, it was led by the German Green Building Council, DGNB, with support from a number of other councils around Europe. And they've worked with financial institutions and investors and developers to test their readiness to implement these criteria. And in that, they've made a number of recommendations to the EU lawmakers, the European Commission, on where the challenges are and where the market might need additional support. And one of the things that they've identified is that there's actually, in the proposals on circularity, the perception is they're going to be more difficult to achieve than the proposals on climate change. So there's a risk there of something which has come to be known as criteria shopping, where companies look for the criteria that are easiest to achieve. And that will mean that the other environmental objectives become less popular or less frequently pursued because there are easier ways to gain alignment. So that's something that the Commission is going to need to look at and work on over time. Just to finish the presentation then, a few trends that we see in terms of the future evolution of the taxonomy. One thing that happened at the beginning of this year, some of you who've been following the taxonomy debate may have been aware of this. There was some controversy around a proposal to include nuclear and gas power generation into the taxonomy criteria. And previously, the expert group had excluded them, had said, no, gas is not, it's a fossil fuel, it can't be considered as a sustainable activity. And similarly on nuclear, they decided to exclude it on the grounds of nuclear waste and pollution. Because of political pressure from a certain number of member states, there was a proposal brought forward, and it was successful to reintroduce these activities into the taxonomy, and that has caused a lot of upset. There were a number of environmental NGOs that left the expert group in protest. There is in fact a legal challenge now from some of those environmental groups against this proposal. And what we're seeing in terms of market response is that there are some actors who are positioning themselves now as greener than the taxonomy, so going beyond, exceeding the criteria, excluding nuclear and gas, for example, from their sustainable portfolios. And that could have interesting implications for the building and construction sector. We may see companies working to exceed the criteria, again, to differentiate themselves and demonstrate their market leadership by being able to say, you know, we go beyond taxonomy compliance. So to try and provide an answer to this question that I began with of, you know, can this tool, can this taxonomy, can it help us decarbonize the built environment? Can it help us address that resource consumption that I highlighted in the slide at the beginning? Our answer to that really is we think it can, but only with more work. More work needs to be done to make it a success. So we are, with our network, are setting up a sustainable finance task force. We're in the process of establishing it. It will have a working group specifically dedicated to initially the EU taxonomy, but potentially with scope to broaden that out to look at other taxonomies. We know there are other countries and regions in the world developing their own taxonomies. We see three things that working group needs to do. One is it needs to help build the capacity of the industry. I said that there are many companies who are finding this quite complicated, finding it quite difficult. So we want to work on some basic introductory guidance on how to engage with the taxonomy for the built environment sector. We also recognize there's a need to build more consensus. The criteria are reasonably robust, but there is still room for different interpretations in different countries and for them to be applied in different ways. And we think that could be a problem, that could cause confusion. So we want to work with market actors, with our green building councils, to try and build that consensus and make sure that the taxonomy is being applied consistently across the region. And also outside the region, we know companies who are based in Europe but have operations in other parts of the world, whether it's Asia Pacific region or the Americas. They will have to report the alignment of their activities outside of Europe. So we need to support them in how they can apply this framework, because it's very much been designed with a European approach, and it is based and linked closely to European standards and European policies. So companies operating outside of Europe will need support in that aspect too. And then finally, we would like to try and work to build the influence both of our network, but also the sector more broadly, making sure that sustainability leaders in the sector continue to help shape the evolution of the EU taxonomy, but also taxonomies in other regions. And again, there's an opportunity to work on fostering and supporting alignment across those taxonomies, to make sure that these tools are supporting the reorientation of capital that we talked about at the beginning. And there will also be a working group that will look in parallel at this at voluntary frameworks. So the taxonomy is very much a regulatory framework. There are voluntary tools, ESG tools in the market, and we within this task force are going to be looking at those as well. But for the sake of time, I'll stop there. My email address is on the slide. If you want to ask more, if you want to find out more about the work that we're doing, then you can always get in touch with myself or with Joy. And I look forward to an interesting discussion. Look forward to the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stephen. And we can really see that this is a very important structure for us to continue to speed up this decarbonization process. So next, we wanted to hear from Mr. Joseph Chan. So he is the Undersecretary for Finance Services and the Treasury from the government of Hong Kong. So he will be sharing from the perspective of how the government is setting this environment for sustainable finance.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to join you all at the Asia Pacific Network Festival. In 2019 in Hong Kong, electricity generation accounted for about 66% of total carbon emissions. Buildings account for about 90% of Hong Kong's total electricity consumption. Promoting energy conservation and improving energy efficiency can help reduce the cost of transformation. Industry participation is important in promoting and improving Hong Kong's sustainable built environment. The Hong Kong Green Building Council Limited, HKGBC, a certification body for the building assessment tool BEAM+, promotes green buildings with the aim to advance towards net zero. The HKGBC is discussing with the government the development of a sustainability assessment system for infrastructure projects, and is preparing a guidebook on urban sustainable built environment to be used as a basis for the building assessment of green finance. Indeed, green finance is key to mobilize capital towards sustainability, and the Hong Kong SR government has launched a series of measures to promote green finance. We launched the Government Green Bond Program back in 2018. Under the program, we have successfully issued, since May 2019, government green bonds totaling close to $10 billion equivalent. The proceeds from the government green bonds issued have been used to finance a total of 45 green projects under 4 eligible categories. A very high proportion of proceeds were allocated to green building projects. We strive to develop Hong Kong into a regional hub for green and sustainable finance. serving as a premier financing platform for international and mainland green enterprises and green projects in raising funds through issuing bonds, funds, initial public offerings, and other channels. The Central People's Government has set out in the 14th Five-Year Plan to promote comprehensive green transformation of economic and social developments, an endeavor to have carbon dioxide emissions peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. In Hong Kong, the Hong Kong SR government announced Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2050 in October last year, outlining the strategies and targets for combating climate change and achieving carbon neutrality. We look forward to joining hands with the various sectors of the community to strive to reduce Hong Kong's carbon emissions by 50% before 2035 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2050. The Central People's Government promulgated the outline development plan for the Guangdong Hong Kong Macau Greater Bay Area in 2019, supporting Hong Kong's development into a green finance center in the region, and the opinion on providing financial support for the development of the Greater Bay Area in May 2020, supporting more Greater Bay Area entities to make use of our platform for the financing and certification of their green projects, and supporting Guangdong incorporated financial institutions to issue green bonds and other green financial products in Hong Kong. We will continue to capitalize on the enormous green finance opportunities presented by the Greater Bay Area and encourage more entities to make use of Hong Kong's financial and professional services for green and sustainable investment, financing, and certification to support green enterprises and projects in the region. We will continue to work in concert with the financial regulators and the industry and take a multi-pronged strategy to promote green and sustainable finance in Hong Kong, providing the necessary infrastructure and catalysts to coordinate the management of climate and environmental risks to the financial sector, accelerate the growth of green and sustainable finance in Hong Kong, and support the government's climate strategies. Relevant government bureaus and financial regulators established the Green and Sustainable Finance Cross-Agency Steering Group in May 2020 to carry out the relevant work. Among others, we launched a new Green and Sustainable Finance grant scheme in May last year to provide subsidy for eligible bond issuers and loan borrowers to cover the expenses on bond issuance and external review services. The scheme can encourage more green financing activities to be conducted in Hong Kong and attract more financial and professional service providers, including external reviewers, to set up or expand the business in Hong Kong with a view to establishing a well-rounded green finance ecosystem here. As I mentioned earlier, we have launched the Government Green Bond Program to promote the development of green finance and green bond market in Hong Kong. Under the program, this year in May, we have issued the inaugural retail green bond of 20 billion Hong Kong dollars, which was the largest retail green bond issuance across the globe at the time. The issuance was well received by the investors. We will continue to issue green bonds having regard to the market situation, with a view to setting market benchmark and enriching the ecosystem of green and sustainable finance. As announced in the 2022-23 budget by the Financial Secretary, we will continue to issue more green bonds in 2022-23. On carbon market opportunities, we are working actively towards developing Hong Kong into a global, high-quality, voluntary carbon market. The Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Limited, HKEX, has commenced discussions with various carbon exchanges and stakeholders from across the carbon market ecosystem and launched the Hong Kong International Carbon Market Council in July this year, to gather insights from members on the development of an efficient and effective Hong Kong-based international carbon market. Nurturing talents is crucial to further promoting green and sustainable finance. Having regard to the new trend of developing low carbon and sustainable economy, we plan to launch a 3-year pilot green and sustainable finance capacity building support scheme in the 4th quarter this year to provide subsidies for the training and acquisition of relevant professional qualifications, so as to encourage practitioners and prospective practitioners in the financial and other relevant sectors to participate in the relevant training, expanding the local green finance professional team and the talent pool. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hong Kong SAR government will continue to work with the industry and the community to promote sustainability. On this note, I would like to thank the World Green Building Council for organizing today's event. I would like to wish you all a future strive with sustainable businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. So it's actually very promising to see how the government is extending their support to the industry's sustainability growth. So next, we will have Esther. She actually setting up the record because from June all the way, like we have in each of our webinar, she's the only one cover from the beginning to the end. And she's also the one that is able to cover from climate action, health and well-being, resource and circularity, and now the green finance. Next month, she's also the jury panels for our APN Awards as well. So we're really looking forward to hear more from you. Over to you, Esther.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. And well, I'm really excited to talk about green financing. And because it so happened that CDL actually rolled out the first green bond by a Singapore company in 2017 April. And since then, actually sustainability finance and sustainability linked loan and all those, took off very well in Singapore market. And of course, I called it actually an enabler for greening the built environment towards net zero. And of course, all of us know that, we need technology, we need know-how, we also need funding, because there are already technologies can help, buildings to achieve net zero. But where can we find the funding is also very important. From a business perspective, of course, we have to look at how do we channel fundings. So today I want to just focus mainly on this, the business angle of, channel funding to, green our building. So this slide, I have shown it before, that really the last couple of years, it was really a new dawn of sustainability. ESG really exploded into the mainstream, whether it is political, business agenda, industry, like us, we've been talking about Race to Zero, and World Green Building Council is playing a key role to promote net zero carbon building commitment, and not just net zero, but also looking at the whole life cycle as well. And last year at Glasgow, COP26, net zero became a North Star goal for almost aligning all the investors, the key players in the finance community. As you can see in the center, column of this slide, we have the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, we have the Insurance Alliance, was formed July 2021. Institutional investors started earlier in 2019, and during COP26, we also saw the Banking Alliance. And bankings are very important, Banking Alliance, because no business can grow and thrive without financial support from banks. And the last one is also very important, is GFANZ, which is actually Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. It was formed during Glasgow, and it comprises 450 most important players in the financial sector, whether it is stock exchanges or analysts, leading banks, and also insurance companies and research firms, and standard sectors as well. So these GFANZ have also expanded on their network, and in Singapore, we just set up office here in Singapore. in partnership with our stock exchange as well. So Race to Zero, how, widespread it is, just look at this slide. In fact, the supporting companies, regions, cities, and countries, and all add up to about more than 90% of global GDP. And I would say that this is going to be really a growing force for change, and most of them are actually in the position to drive change. And for us in Singapore here, we also, pledged for net zero in February this year. And prior to that, last year, February 2021, Singapore has also launched the so-called SG Green Plan 2030, which set goals and targets that are aligned with the global goals and the Paris Agreement's commitment and all. These are the 5 pillars. And apart from the city in nature, sustainable living, number 3, the third pillar is most relevant to our building sector, energy reset. What we are looking at is not just green building, green mark anymore, but we are also looking at, for all new development, has to be super low energy building that is actually about more than 60% more efficient than the norm and the normal building code. So the green economy and resilient future are the ultimate objective of having this green plan. And with this pledge to net zero, we also see more stringent and robust, reporting standard by our stock exchange, and also a very, quite ambitious, carbon tax regime as well. In 2 years' time, our carbon tax is going to be 5 times more than today. And in another 2 years, the following 2 years will be 9 times more. And towards 2030, it will be all the way up to $80 per ton. Right now, we are paying $5 per ton. And for CDL, we have actually started our green building journey more than 2 decades ago. And of course, after Paris Agreement, we actually consolidated all our green building policies and all the energy efficiency policies and all that into a climate change policy. And we also set very clear goals and targets. And in 2017, we started to pursue the Science-Based Target Initiative validated reduction target. And it took us almost 8 months to achieve, to get the scientists to endorse on a set of reduction targets. And most of them are actually looking at new development as well as asset management as well. So that at that time, that was before IPCC, declared that we have to look at 1.5 degree. So at that time, we was aligned with 2 degree. And last year, because we pledged to net zero with World GBC, and it has to be aligned with 1.5 degree, commitment as well. So we adjusted the SBTi validated targets to align with 1.5. And all these are actually pointing to the direction of achieving the net zero by 2050. And whenever we talk about net zero, there are also questions about greenwashing. Companies really pledge to net zero with very specific and transparent targets. Are we just promising something that it is bluntly ambitious? So for us, we want to adopt a very prudent approach, and by phases. By 2030, we are looking at the first phase, which is all the new developments, as well as 13 Singapore assets. Yeah, so with very specific how many square meters of floor area and all that are all specifically listed out on the World GBC website. And we are looking at not just committing a target, but also must disclose it with an action plan, and also we validate it with external party. And of course, last but not least, we need to bring our ecosystem of stakeholders together. Advocacy is very important, and what we are looking at is also the prompt disclosure of interim performance, not when only 2030 then we declare whether we are on track or not. So we actually have our own annual sustainability report. We are now we are preparing the 16th report already. We started reporting since 2008, and over and above we also have a quarterly report as well, and we are looking at not just scope 1, scope 2, but also scope 3. then we actually, when you talk about net zero, research actually show that when you talk about net zero, it's not just about energy efficiency or adoption of renewable energy. Research actually show that 45% of the solutions can be, based on circular economy. Just now, earlier speakers also talk about circular economy and all that, and how do we, look at to raise the bar for, bringing back the waste, and to back to the economy and turning waste into valuable resources and all. And definitely building material is one area that we are also, have embarked on a couple of innovations that is looking at turning waste into sands and cement. And hopefully with all these, more robust R&D, we can help to look at solutions to reduce carbon footprint, not just by reducing energy consumption, but also looking at raising energy efficiency and also using lower, materials that have lower embodied carbon. And this is actually a summary of our sustainability strategies and reporting. At the core of it is still remain as in conserving as we construct, which is actually a corporate ethos that we established since 1995. And of course, during a time that there was nobody really talk about sustainability like where we are today. But at that time, what we know is in our industry, we have high environmental impact and also impacting people's life as well. So we need to conserve as we construct and also manage our property. And over the years, we have actually embraced more than just one or two standards. We started with GRI in 2008, and we expanded to CDP, looking at carbon disclosure first, and then we expanded to water reporting, and now we are also looking at supply chain as well. And of course, GRESB is one important framework we must look at, which is the global reporting, the global real estate sustainability benchmark. And of course, you have the SDG, 17 goals, 169 targets. As TCFD is one of the most important and widely adopted framework now, is the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. And SBTI, I talked about it already. When we talk about pledge to net zero, we must set target backed by science rather than some numbers that you imagine. And SSB and CDSB has actually merged under the ISSB, and globally we are working very hard on standardization of reporting standards and frameworks and all, and which actually taxonomy is also part of the framework that we are looking at, and has direct impact on how we can tap onto sustainable finance. And Singapore has also rolled out our own Singapore taxonomy as well. So the next slide is actually looking at the strategies that we are talking about, the 4I and also the so-called 3 deliverables. The 4 I's is about integration, and ESG will not work in silos. So we have to integrate it into everything we do in the business and every business unit. And the second and third I's is actually innovation and investment, because today we are not looking at mitigation anymore. We have to look at adaptation to speed up on technologies application. And of course, the last I is a disclosure and of impact. The last I is impact disclosure. And the 3 deliverable we look at is decarbonization, digitalization, and disclosure. So all these actually have to encapsulate into our product as well. So there's a couple of projects that we have set the benchmark for Singapore's Green Mark Platinum Super Low Energy. This is a mixed development, comprises residential, service apartment, office, and retail. And this is going to be TOP in a few years' time, but we already matched the standards and the framework of PCA Green Mark Platinum Super Low Energy. And similarly, this year, we actually have also achieved the Green Mark Platinum Super Low Energy Executive Condo. Executive Condo is actually residential development, which is targeting at the upgrader. So even, not a luxurious, condominium, we are also investing in bringing down the carbon footprint and improving, make sure that we achieve the super low energy standard. And of course, you can't just sit here and don't use energy at all, because we are just next to the equator. Cooling is very important. Comfort for our tenants is very important. So how do we raise in energy efficiency is very important. So that's why we have been very committed to innovation and R&D and all. And how do we manage building is also very important. The top innovation is about DigitHub, using a digital platform to improve energy efficiency and also management of building, and with less manpower and higher efficiency. And there are plenty of others, innovation we are piloting. And I would just like to bring the attention to this top one called AMPD, which actually traditionally we use your diesel operated energy source to power construction activities. So with this pilot, we actually turned to electricity rather than using diesel, and working very closely with our main contractors and WAHUBs to do this. And the first pilot, the first phase was very successful, and we have actually achieved a carbon reduction of over 80%. And what is more encouraging is it helps us to reduce cost as well. So reducing cost, reducing carbon footprint, and it's really, really double thumbs up for, building sectors to, look into all this technology as well. And then now we have to look at who is going to fund it. And there are solutions. In fact, we have seen, the rapid growth of all these, ESG funding over the years. You can see on the, on your left-hand side, the slide, the chart, and it is still fast growing for ESG investment fund, because institutional investors are also, setting target for net zero, and they will screen out companies that are not deemed as taking enough climate action or a good ESG performance. So companies have to raise the bar in ESG performance in order to channel ESG funds and also sustainable finance to accelerate your climate action and green building action. And how do you convince them? And company needs to, score well in their so-called, this is my annual report card that look at all the independent, leading ESG ratings and disclosure standards, such as like MSCI, CDP, Global 100, FTSE, Dow Jones, you name it, we have it. And these are the independent assessment of your company's ESG performance. And these are also becoming the, the checklist by our green finance, bankers as well. So sustainability linked loan, they always use one or two of such ratings to first check the borrower's track record. And then they will look into your project finance, framework, and whether it meets the, the so-called the EU taxonomy, and as well as the green bond principles as well. So last but not least, it's actually just to show you that since 2017, after we launched our green bond, we continues to actively tap onto green loans and revolving credit facility, or different form of sustainability linked loan. The one that we are really, really proud of is we tap onto funds and to drive innovation. The so-called SDG innovation loan was launched. The first phase was launched in 2019. And it's a 3-year loan, and we have also achieved, the bankers framework and requirement, and we have actually enjoyed a few basis points discount from this 250 million SDG innovation loan. And the bankers are very happy with this collaboration, and just offer us the second phase, another 3 years of 250 million SDG innovation loan. And with this collaboration, I'm sure we can actually accelerate even, more technologies, adaptation, and all. And I think today we are all talking about, green economy. We are all chasing net zero, and it will not happen if we are not ambitious and we are not working fast enough. And today, business is no longer about short term. We have to look at midterm and long term targets, and we have to add purpose, because without a healthy planet, there won't be healthy people or market for business to thrive and make profits as well. And on the other hand, as business, we also have to maintain financially viable so that we can continue to contribute to, building people, building communities, and also, to conserve our planet for our future generation. And with this, and thank you. And I would love to take any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. We are very grateful for CDL's support from the Global Corporate Advisory Board to the Asia Pacific Network. Thank you again. Yeah, so later we will have opportunity to have the panel discussion with everyone. So if you have more questions, you can post it in the comments now, and we'll be able to address in the panel discussion later. Yeah, so again, Esther has mentioned about bringing the resources to the Asia Pacific. Indeed, in Asia Pacific, we are really having this rapid growth in this next 10 years. So we really desperately need resources and we need support as well. So next, let's hear from Mr. Sanjay. He's the Senior General Manager from HDFC. Let's just hear from him in the different perspective in the Banking Institute. Thank you.
Joy, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Am I audible? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you well. Yes. Go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my fellow panelists and the participants, whichever part of the world you're joining this session. Let me acknowledge my sincere thanks to WGVC and Joy for inviting me to this session to share our views on the green finance. And I will specifically talk about the role of a housing finance sector in green building and net zero. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Sanjay Joshi, and I work for the leading mortgage finance company in India, which is HDFC. And it is the first private sector mortgage finance company, about 45 years old. And I head affordable and the green housing vertical here. Before really I talk about the green finance, let me quickly talk about what we do, because then probably we can correlate with the role the housing finance sector will have on the green finance as well as green building and net zero. HDFC was incorporated in 1979-77 as a specialized mortgage finance company in India. It's a financial conglomerate now with interest in different financial sectors besides mortgages. We have about 651 outlets in India. We have 3 overseas offices catering NRIs. The total assets under management is about 85 billion US dollars. And the total number of units we have financed is over 9.5 million. Our focus has been continuously on the affordable housing, which is the need of the hour for country like India, and nearly about 23% of our business caters to that segment. An average loan, what we do is about 1.1 million and 1.97 million for a particular affordable housing segment. Now, also a little bit on the green building, because that's something is again very much needed in India, and we are in a very nascent stage as far as green buildings are concerned. We have disbursed close to 3.6 billion US dollars in the green projects. And when I'm saying 3.6 billion dollars, I'm talking about the retail loans. Whereas as a corporate, we also finance the corporate sector, where 75% of our portfolio is green rated. Let me also tell you that we are the first company which started a green deposits mainly from the retail customers to finance sustainable housing in India. Now, why I said that the role of housing finance sector is very important. The way urbanization is happening in India, cities are growing very fast. We have about 32% of the population who is in urban areas and is likely to go to 50%, which means more and more people would need housing. And as Joseph said in his presentation also, that the building sector contributes substantially to the carbon emission. In India, the the penetration of the housing sector is very low compared to the rest of the world, including the Asian Pacific countries. We are just 11% of the GDP is the GDP is mortgaged to the finance, which means there is a huge potential and huge growth expected in the housing sector. Now, climate change is one of the biggest threat globally to our current and the future generation, and that is what I'm trying to actually project through this slide. Is also going to impact economies and of course to the nature. From the Indian side, there has been consistent focus now of the government and the policies, because our PM has committed that by 2070 we will be net zero. Though earlier it was expected uh, by us that we will try and do it fast, but I think looking at the finance and the other challenges, the PM has given a commitment that we will try and ensure that we are net zero by 2070, which is a long-term commitment. But even by 2030, which was the one of the commitments globally by most of the countries, that we have said that even we will bring down the use of the fossil oil by close to 45%. Now, if you look at this presentation, uh, the contribution of the carbon emission to India is third compared to other global economies. But if you also look at the economy, which is a fastest growing economy globally, our GDP is expected to touch 5 trillion by 2025, where the carbon emissions will go up if we don't take care of the challenges and the concerns which are there for the government. The green finance uh, is central to the oral discussion today on sustainable of the economic growth. The rapid economic development is generally achieved at the cost of environment, but now we have to change this approach. We have to look at how the growth and the environment can be protected simultaneously. The green finance is a fast emerging priority for the public policies, not only in India but globally. And if we talk about India, there has been improvement in public awareness and the financial options in India. And also there has been increased coordination among the stakeholders. Now, why there is a coordination required? Because one stakeholder alone cannot solve this problem. The green finance is mainly used for environment sustainable project, which means the amount which has to be raised has to be used for three main sectors: clean transportation, which means lower greenhouse emissions, clean energy, and energy efficient buildings. Now, I will mainly focus on clean energy as well as energy efficient project, where we work very closely with the stakeholders here. There is huge demand for housing, and housing is expected to grow at an average growth of about 12 to 15% on year-on-year basis. There has been huge requirement for housing, as I mentioned, that because of the urbanization. So therefore, adequate precautions have to be taken, and policy changes or new technologies or new building products have to be incorporated so that the carbon emissions are minimized to the extent. Right now, as I said, that there are stakeholders many stakeholders. Let me give you an example. The key stakeholders for us today as a financial sector, and we talk about the greenhousing. There are regulator on one side who makes policies, who regulates the financial institutions. The other side is the policymakers, talks about the policies. The third one is the financial institution and a bank like housing finance and us. The developers were mainly involved in construction of such buildings, and the end user. Now, the stakeholder role is very critical. Now, if I look at the regulator, now though RBI has been proactively working on various points related to energy efficiency, related to raising on the green bonds, they are liberalizing the policies, but still there are challenges, and it will take a long way before we are able to uh, meet all the requirements. Now, the other regulator here is the SEBI, which monitors and controls the stock exchanges. Now, they have their various disclosure reports where the corporate sector has to disclose what are their initiatives, what are the things they are doing for ESG. The normally the corporates are very focused now, and they've been incorporating their policies, ensuring that their business model is sustainable. A lot of things the regulator is trying to do in terms of clean energy. For example, the renewable energy, which is again very much needed in India. The green energy under the various policies, what RBI has done is made part of the priority sector. Now, what is the priority sector in India? Priority sector is India where the government wants to focus on specific areas, and the energy, clean energy, which is renewable energy, has been made part of the priority sector. Various incentives are given if somebody is investing in clean energy, is renewable energy, and also on the affordable housing as such. Now, green housing is only a subset of affordable housing. Now, green housing, uh, uh, the government has not made as a regulatory, it is just an optional even on today. One of the things I think going forward will be required, that it has to be made priority, it has to be made mandatory for institution, for the corporate or for the local bodies, that the building must come as a green building. Now, I'm attending a conference here in Hyderabad, India, where the Global Congress is happening, and I'm just told the total green buildings which is covered by the rating agencies. Total area which we have covered is close to 9.7 billion square feet, which is very high and commendable. But there is a huge potential and a huge possibility to even cover more. Now, for policymakers, what probably are needed, that they have come up with the energy conservation bill. Now, what is energy conservation bill is basically that going forward, they will monitor the use of energy for the projects. You will be penalized if you don't maintain the maximum energy which can be used, and accordingly incentives will be taken away. Now, uh, the other thing is, again, a lot of incentives are given for promoting energy efficient projects in terms of floor space index, in terms of cheaper financing, but still a lot has to be done from the policymaker side. Now, in terms of the banking, the biggest challenge for bank is that again cost, because when you talk about the green finance, I think globally the challenge has been in the interest rate. Because of the high interest rate, again the funds are not easily available, and when we look at the projects which have to be financed through the green, I think there are a lot of challenges in raising funds at an affordable price. uh, so what is needed is probably increased pool of resources are needed, where the funds can be used only for the green projects. There has to be awareness um, created so that green buildings are promoted and people demand for it. I think there are lack of awareness, though there has been consistent focus from the institution, from the government side, and even the rating agencies. But still, I think lots has to be done on this side. Now, on the developer side, I think developers today it's optional, as I mentioned. It's not mandatory that they have to make a green building because there are no regulation as such. And since it's an optional, they leave it to developer what they want to do it. However, there are incentives available to the developers if they make green projects. They get additional FSI, and effectively, it helps them go for green buildings. The other thing which is needed here, if we have to do reduce the carbon emission, is the use of the latest technologies. And again, government is trying to promote a lot of energy efficient technologies, where not only the natural resources are not used, it is also helps them reduce carbon emission. It helps them reduce wastage of the material. I think those things are there. And as far as the stakeholders, which is the fifth stakeholder, which is the end user here, I think lack of awareness is there. And today, because there is lack of awareness, they don't demand the green buildings, and again, they don't see any benefit. So all the stakeholders are trying to make them uh, feel that the benefits which are there and why it is needed. I think this is happening uh, in a long way. Now, if you ask me, what are the challenges we have in the green building? I think biggest challenge is is awareness. The second challenge is high cost of funds, whether it's raised from within India or it's raised overseas. And third one is need of a regulation. I think unless all three are done, and what is needed is again all the stakeholders have to come together on a common platform and work. One stakeholder alone, whether it's a policymaker or a regulator or an institution, cannot do it again. So it's a combination of efforts required from all the sides, and then probably we can see the mission, the global mission which is there, uh, will be met by all of us. I think with this I will close uh, here, and if there are any queries, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Sanjay. Indeed, collaboration is very important for everyone, for the industry to move forward. So next, we will have Mr. Nicholas from Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain has been also very supportive to the World Green Building Council network, from our corporate advisory board to the Asia Pacific network as well. So over to you, Nicholas.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon. Nicolas Suret, so CFO for Saint-Gobain in Asia Pacific. I would like to thank the Asia Pacific Network for this invitation today, and it will be my pleasure to share with you a couple of examples of what do we operations guys do in our day-to-day to develop green finance as a way to promote our own reduction towards zero carbon and the reduction of our customers and partners footprint. I'm speaking from Shanghai. I will start just giving you sharing a few words about Saint-Gobain commitment, vision, and purpose. Saint-Gobain being a multinational group focused on creation, innovation, and manufacture of materials and solutions to reduce the carbon footprint of our customers, with one objective is to build lighter and more sustainable for the future of our planet. So we are driven really by the carbon roadmap, our zero net carbon emissions by 2050 target, like many of us around the globe nowadays. Our journey started a long time ago, 2019, with the United Nations Global Pledge for Carbon Neutrality. And since then, all our entities around the world, around 2,000 companies, are all aligned, focused on their journey towards reduction. Saint-Gobain Group, just in a very few words, but it's an old group somehow, with more than 350 years ago since it started, located in 75 countries around the globe, and supported by 8 worldwide R&D center, cross-business R&D centers, and I'll come back to that. We have around 800 manufacturing facilities around the world. And in APAC region, we are representing around 3 billion turnover, 10,000 employees, and 80 manufacturing facilities. We are present in lots of building materials, as we are known in glass, of course, but also mortars, construction chemicals, insulation, which is a key part of the answer to sustainable building development, but also modular construction, mobility, surface solutions. So I'm sure you know us across our brands in these different segments. And we take very concrete actions to deliver our strategic plan to grow, whilst impacting the reduction of our carbon footprint and the reduction of the carbon footprint of our customers. This is for us I would say the biggest challenge and opportunity, which is simultaneously as manufacturer. Of course, the manufacturing process is associated to carbon emissions. So we are working on the reduction of our own carbon footprint in our production, and on the other hand, we keep on innovating to propose new material, new solutions to help our customers decrease their own carbon footprint. So globally, just as a figure, every year the carbon emissions which are avoided by the usage of our products that we have manufactured, they represent in average 40 times the emissions that were needed for their manufacturing. So that being said, how does finance contribute to this journey, which is the two examples I would like to share with this panel today? There are plenty solutions, there are plenty ways, of course, of finance, and most of them have been already commented by the previous speakers. I will just give 2 examples, one about green deposit and the second one about green financing. So here, I would say simple examples of what we, Saint-Gobain APAC finance function, what do we do in the region to promote the sustainability in our choices, in our criterias, in our incentives to the business to adopt ESG KPIs within everything we do, and that's what it is about. So the first one, this first example, is about a green deposit scheme we put in place in Thailand this year. Both are recent example. We had a situation when you are present with many entities in around 10 countries in Asia Pacific, with cash pooling arrangement and sometimes cash staying in the country. And so we've established together with our headquarters a criteria to start investing this money, this cash which is left in the countries within funds which are devoted to financing ESG related projects. And I think it's a quite virtual process where we do receive in return associated certificate issued by the banks, which are allowing us to communicate and to link directly our objective to our act in every function of the company. So this has been well received by our customers, by our stakeholders. Since we started this example in April this year, we already increased the deposit in this fund from 100 to 250 million Thai bahts, and we have now another Saint-Gobain entity adding to the same scheme, being offered by another bank group, partner bank. So the market is clearly developing, and we will certainly replicate this scheme in other geographies whenever available. So that's quite straight, simple, but in place already. Second example we did recently this year has been the development with another group bank partner of a sustainable linked loan after the sustainable linked deposit. So this time we needed to finance a joint venture for a new project we are developing in the Henan province of China. Got a few figures here: 100 million RMB capital. The loan we were looking for 180 around RMB million to support the capex of this new facility. We are producing plaster and plasterboard. The bank was clearly motivated by the project because plaster is produced from DSG. DSG is a byproduct from the power plant, so it's a good example of circularity with the power plants to transform them into a light product that will allow the conversion of buildings from cement, traditional building material, to light plaster and plasterboard solutions. So the loan that we put in place, I mean, with this bank is aims to incentivize the borrower to achieve predefined sustainability performance objectives. These are our objectives. In the case of this loan, green electricity usage, carbon intensity of our products measured by third parties, and the recycling and the reusage of the self-produced related waste. That's also a topic for us to ensure that all our waste is recycled in our process. The translation of all this is called the sustainable link loan. So basically, incentive if we achieve and exceed the target, and penalties if we do not meet this objective. And the comment here being for us that, I mean, this loan agreement is a recognition of our seriousness, our commitment to our own carbon footprint reduction, and our confidence in our achievement of our environmental targets. So it's a good, for me, illustration of our ability to carry out our carbon roadmap, reaching our objective of net zero carbon by 2050. And at the same time, I think that by choosing to apply these green financing methods, both examples presented here, to support the development of our building material production in these two countries, we demonstrate the importance for us, for the group Saint-Gobain, to act sustainably and of course to commit to responsible growth whilst having positive impact on our planet. And that's really, as explained in the introduction, the overall strategic plan of Saint-Gobain Grow and Impact plan. That's the vision for our group, and that's a healthy way. We have other means to explore when it comes to green financing. One of them we are working now on is sustainable supply chain financing. So it's also to create a way to offer a differentiated financing to our suppliers according to their sustainability level scoring, again with third-party assessments, but trying to get the whole supply chain ultimately from suppliers to customers linked by the same ambition, which is to improve their sustainability performance. So that's in brief the two examples to be shared to demonstrate our commitment to this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas. Great examples for us to learn as well. Thank you. So next, we will have Dennis from AEC. AEC is our net zero collaborator in Asia Pacific Network, and to support the development of a net zero readiness framework. And let's hear, Dennis is also the specialist in the green finance. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Today, I would like to thank Asia Pacific Festivals, organizers, World Green Middle Council, and today I want to share something about on green finance and transition finance. And I'm Dennis, who is the CEO of AEC Group and AEC Capital. And AEC Group provides one-stop solutions to sustainability and carbon neutrality. On the right-hand side, we have green and healthy buildings services, mainly on certifications, sustainability design and consultants, and acoustic, audiovisual, smart and green tech. On the left-hand side, we provide services on carbon neutrality solutions, climate risk management, ESG reporting, and advisory, and definitely green finance. And we, for our company, we already signed up for a science-based target and also commit to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. And look at the definitions of green finance by UN. Green finance is to increase the level of financial flows from the public, private, and not-for-profit sectors to sustainability development priorities. And UN has the 5 financing approach in Asia Pacific to promote green finance. The first one, harness public balance sheet and directing the financial through policy and also transformation culture, upgrading to governance, and also enhance market practice. And with this 5 approach, and they will promote green and sustainability finance through its different platforms. For example, the UN Financial Initiative, Sustainability Stock Exchange Initiative, PRI, Principle for Responsible Investment, Equator Principles, and also Principle for Sustainable Insurance. And let's look at green finance. Actually, green finance includes green debt and green investments. And in very traditional definitions of green investment, it's talking about all forms of investment considers environmental effect and enhanced environmental sustainability. Later on, EU has upgraded the definitions. Like they included other areas like social and governance on top of environmental to cover more bordered areas of financing. And we have for SDG, after the establishment of SDG goals, and we have a more modern definitions of sustainable finance. any kind of finance can support the SDG goals and meet the 169 sub-targets out of and under the 17 goals. And see how much money from the investment side we can get from the market, or how much money is support from the market. Okay, according to PRI statistics, as at 2021 March 31st, and the AUM reached almost like 121 trillions of dollars, and 3,826 asset owners or investment managers sign up for PRI secretary. And we can see transformations from traditional investments to sustainability, to ESG investment strategy, and also impact investments. And people are looking for the traditional market returns, then later on they will shift from traditional market returns to look for the impact. Impact maybe will be the first consideration for the investment. And also the investors are shifting from short-term to medium and long-term. And look at the investments. Some of the sustainability investments will map with SDG goals. And let's look at the top 4 SDG that the investment map with. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. And SDG 11, sustainable cities and community related to the building industry. And SDG 13, climate actions related to carbon neutralities, and all supported by the private equity portals, fixed income portals, and public equity portals, and real asset portals. And when we talk about investments for the sustainability investments, we will touch on the green technology, and we have some examples of the green technology subjects. The first one will be the energy. The investment perhaps will invest in renewable energy, or the new idea, the new device that can generate renewable energy, and also provides more energy efficiency. And people also look at green building certifications, buildings, and also environmental preferred purchasing, like sustainable procurement. And the fourth one will be the green chemistry, and there will be lots of research on providing green chemistry to make our less hazardous substance inside during the building stage. And the fifth one will be the nanotechnology. We will have a couple of the devices that can build on the nanotechnologies to have greener features. I can share some of the green or low carbon tech, like the solar chimney, seawater cooling, and super low embodied carbon materials, IoT infrastructures, and also some of the hydrogen cells vehicle, and digital twins, and phase changing materials. So those are the some of the new green or low carbon tech nowadays. When we go through the investment, we normally go through the VC and VC trend. And nowadays, in traditional VC, we only have at early stage we only have seed VCs funding source, and growth stage with venture capital, and on exit stage IPO. But we have nowadays we have a more expanded routines for that. For at early stage, we have rolling funds, crowd funds, angel investments. Growth stage, we have rolling funds and also private stock exchange. But at the exit, we have beside IPO, we can have SPAC and also direct listing. And in terms of the debt capital market side, we see the growth as well from US dollar 358 billion in 2019 to 730 billion in 2020, and reached 1.1 trillion in 2021, and we can see the diversifications of the use of proceeds. But the majority is still in a green area. We can see the area will be social, sustainability linked product, and we can see new products like transition financing in 2021. And there are a couple of green finance standards worldwide and also in China and Hong Kong. Globally, we have ICMA principles to support the green finance framework and standards. And beside that, we have primary bond initiative. In China, they have their own system, and Hong Kong, we have HKQA system. And the most important things within the standards will be the green finance taxonomy. Any projects that can fulfill the objective and the taxonomy, then we can at least classify as a green project. For example, the energy efficiency green building is one of the taxonomies within the green finance framework. And let's look at the use of proceeds from green finance. Globally, the first priority for the use of proceeds will be on energy, and the second one will be building. Same in China, but in Hong Kong, the first priority will be on using buildings, and the second one will be in energy sector. Last year, China has the first one will be on transportations. The second one will be on energy. So a little change. And there are also additional standards established in October 2021 by ISO, and they call the standard is called ISO 14030. And let's look at some of the examples of green finance. We have a traditional financing back to 2016 in Hong Kong already is a pink vanilla conventional green bond with the you can see the use of proceeds, building developments and redevelopment, renovations to existing building, tenants improvement, third-party verification, green building assessment. So that's the very traditional green finance financing for in green building sector. Okay, we have recently we have more uptrend one. New World issued the sustainability linked loan and benchmark with GRESB, and that's in 2019. The loans term is linked with the GRESB performance. Okay. Besides New World, other developers also have that kind of sustainability linked loan. And after we study the different taxonomy, actually we can have many potential use of proceeds from green financing that fits the taxonomy. We can think about digital transformations for the buildings, and also new energy, renewable energy installation, decarbonization, energy savings, climate change, resilience, adaptation, and also we can have transition financing from high to low carbon economy. And we have a sustainable supply chain and products, and also R&D as well. And another very linked to the performance of the carbon emissions will be the EDGE certifications. Is a kind of certifications schemes introduced by IFC, and over 170 countries that's adopted. And for the look at level ones, if you have energy reductions for 20%, water reduction 20%, and 20% reductions in material and body carbon, then you got level 1 EDGE certifications. And level 2 EDGE advanced is you need to achieve 40% energy reduction. At level 3, you need to achieve zero carbon standard. Okay, so it's the previously most of the time it's used in the development country, but nowadays it was launched in Hong Kong last year as well. And we can see some of the new trends in green financing is transition financing. Actually, ICMA has the standards, the transition financing standard. They have, if you meet the 5 criteria, for example, a long-term target to align with the goals of the Paris Agreement, ideally to 1.5 degree, and at the very last to well below 2.2 degrees, then if you have this objective and you have the installation to help you to achieve that objective, you can have the transition financing certifications and get the transition financing from the bank. And the other one will be climate bond initiative. They have 5 categories of transition financing. The first one will be near zero, and the second one will be pathway to zeros. That means activity leads to beyond 050 and have a clear 1.5 degree decarbonization pathway. And we have a low pathway to zero, and also we have the interim. Even you don't have a previous carbon reduction target or carbon neutrality target, but you still have some idea, I want to save some carbon emissions, then probably you can classify under strengthened category. So those can help you to get the financing from to support your decarbonization initiative. And we can look at the examples, New World developments in Hong Kong, and they have filed the transition financing, issued the transition financing bond using the CBI's classification pathway to zero. And what's the use of proceeds for? And there are 3 areas. The first one will be seeking on-site renewable energy power installation in commercial and retail property and retrofitting existing buildings. The second one will be the rich long-term power purchasing agreement with third-party energy suppliers and parties. And the seller under the PPA is typical and independent power producer. And the third one will be cooperate with third-party energy supplier and partners on purchasing renewable energy. And so those are the use of proceeds under this pathway to zero transition financing scheme. So that's my sharings for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, this brought to the next exciting part, which will be our panel discussion. Our panel discussion will be moderated by Judy. She's our sustainable finance lead from the World Green Building Council. She's based in Europe, but she's getting super busy because in the Asia Pacific, there are a lot of questions and needs from her. So Judy, let me bring all the panels to you, and I'll hand over the time to you.
Great, thank you, Joy. And hello, everyone. So thank you for the panelists who are staying on and have this discussion. So I hope to have an interactive and collaborative exchange, just like the collaboration we need, to transition to sustainable buildings. So welcome the audience to this last part of the seminar to join now in our panel discussion on how to catalyze green finance with or for sustainable buildings. So I'm very happy to have the opportunities to moderate this discussion because we have such a great pool of expertise, and it's been also really interesting to listen to your presentations and hear about your contributions. So the latest IPCC report that came out earlier this year on mitigation of climate change tells us that there is a climate financing gap, which reflects a persistent misallocation of global capital. So we have a real need to upscale green finance and redirect these finance flows. And I'm pretty sure the building sector is no exception, as everyone knows. So what we also see is that there is an urgency that to act on climate change and other environmental goals that is becoming clearer and clearer. And sustainability is being integrated into every corner of the economy in all regions more and more. And so, as we've heard in these great presentations so far, real estate plays a crucial role, especially in large cities. And there is a lot of movement already that can be seen in the Asia-Pacific region in the real estate and finance sector. So we know that the construction, renovation, and maintenance of sustainable buildings faces many challenges, as we've already heard, but also comes with or offers large financial opportunities. So I would like to focus this panel discussion in bringing the exchange from our panelists on some more reflections on these opportunities and challenges. And I would say also, as it's been pointed before by Sanjay, for example, the need to collaborate with the finance industry, the real estate sector, and all stakeholders, also policymakers, to upscale green finance and transition the building sector to zero emissions. So I don't think we need much of an introduction since all our panelists have already presented, but I would still like to hear from you, where do you see, in just a few words, the main contribution from the company or organization that you represent? So maybe you can share something like a mission statement. What is it that you want to achieve? What is your contribution to a sustainable built environment? So maybe Esther, Anne, do you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think the best way to do it is not just preaching, but action, showing by doing it. And I think we have been, turning this into action. And we built actually 2 net zero building, learning by doing it. And we have one that is actually the Sustainability Academy. We opened it in 2017, and since then it has been only powered by solar energy. And apart from that, it is also at the highest green building standard, using more than 80% is built with cross-laminated timber. So we look at both, energy efficiency, using renewable energy, and also looking at building materials. So this is like what I presented, that when you talk about net zero, there's not just about energy efficiency or renewable energy generation using PPA or whatsoever, but you can also look at, building material as well, especially when now we are talking about scope 3, which is also aligned with World GBC's, whole life carbon cycle. You have to look at what you procure upfront and how you manage your building. And, the tenants, scope 1 and 2 is also, my scope 3. So same for the investment and overseas operations and all that. Their scope 1 and 2 is my scope 3. So many companies nowadays, their scope 3 can account for almost, up to like 90% of the overall greenhouse gas carbon footprint. So for us, we are not different. I mean, if we have global presence, you all need to look at, the wider perspective, not just about your own headquarters. There are 15 categories we have to look at. And of course, there are technology, there are solutions, but they don't come free. They don't come cheap either. So how are we going to look at it? Channel fundings to the right place and look at the, technologies that can really help us to decarbonize towards net zero. It's very challenging. Don't talk about the whole portfolio. You just net zero one building is already very challenging. So you need not just the mindset to do it. You need the skill set, how to apply, technology skill set and all. And importantly is what sort of technology are you going to use? And also funding is very, very important. Yeah, we have to look at mid to long term, and we don't look at ROI immediately, but we do have to look at how certain finance will see the ROI, certain investment will have to looking at, the payback time, and also look at how effectively it can help. Like, for example, some of the energy efficiency or, features and improvements that we put in can help us actually save about 3 to 4 million a year in terms of utility bills over the last 8 years. And we also look at how we can, enhance it. Apart from generation of RE on site, we're also looking at how we can, tap onto off-site generation of RE, because Singapore is because of our land scarcity, we are already labeled as renewable energy challenged by UN already. So we have to look at all sort of, innovative way to tap onto renewable. And
thank you, Esther. I think that's a lot of to-dos and a long mission statement, but it seems that you're doing on many fronts a lot of activity, so that's really great to hear. And to pick up on a sentence you said before, reducing carbon is free in some instances. You mentioned it when you were replacing I think diesel generators with other technologies on site as an example, and I thought that's great, and it's what you can achieve also through energy efficiency measures, because it comes with a lot of benefits. But so thank you so much for that. Maybe if we move now to Sanjay from the housing kind of finance perspective, how would you describe your mission statement to a sustainable built environment?
Yeah, I think if you look at what we have done, though we are only we comes at a later stage, and the buildings have to be planned, and only they are coming to us. But at the corporate level, there has been a committee headed by the executive director, monitoring the impact, and also monitoring the penetration of the financing which we need to do it. The challenge here only is that the we would like to fund 100% of book as a green loan, but the point is, if there has to be the supply, and the biggest challenge of supply today is the non-mandatory requirement of a green building. Since it's an optional, it's taking time for people to understand. And but if you ask me what we are intending to do it, we are trying to see that from our current exposure, more and more penetration is done for the green projects. We are trying to do a tie-up with all the rating agencies, whether it's an IFC Edge or whether it's the IGBC, or there are 5 or 6 agencies. So we're just trying up and trying to promote awareness among the people that they must construct as a developer, and people who are the end user must force builders to construct such building. I think that is what we intend to do going forward.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe if we come to Dennis from the AEC group, so as a consultant, maybe you can play the role actually of bridging maybe the finance sector with the real estate sector. So, well, how would you describe in a few words your mission statement?
I think my mission statement will be to create and upgrade our clients' sustainability value, and also we practice water talk spirit. We not just doing the sustainability development for our clients, and also we are actually participating in it. And for the green building sector, we already certified 12 million square meters of green buildings in the past. And we practicing the how to promote carbon neutrality or the net zero. We look at it practice in 3 areas. The first one will be the advocacy and capacity building by conducting courses and webinar and trainings to our staff and our clients and our public. And the second one will be the technology development. We participate in as we have a responsible investment committee to invest in some of the sustainability investment. We from R&D, incubation, scale up, and commercialization, we help the green tech company to step up. And the third one will be connections to the capital market in investment side, and also from debt financing side as well. So with that, I hope I can further help our clients to achieve carbon neutrality and net zero. Thank you.
Great, that also sounds very interesting. So if I move on now, thinking of how, so it seems that the built environment has a lot of stakeholders, and you need to get them together, and maybe also speak the same language and have the exchange for like finance. The financial industry needs to know, have data to prove that they invest green. At the same time, on the ground, there needs to also to have maybe access to finance, the possibility to also showcase the sustainability level maybe of buildings. So I'm wondering about if you could say a few words about this kind of enabling environment that you need. So both you need it from the policymakers, as we've heard, to maybe sometimes have regulations on disclosure, or also on providing a favorable environment for the uptake of green finance, as we've heard also from the Hong Kong government earlier, that are proactively scaling up these type of policies. So if you could say a few words on how you see maybe the opportunities, but also challenges in interactions with other stakeholders, as you try to upscale green finance in your organizations. So maybe if I will do the other way around now. So starting with Dennis from the AEC group, how would you describe the development of policy? So you actually mentioned before also the taxonomies that are coming out, and you also mentioned maybe something like a common ground taxonomy to align. Could you maybe say a few words about that?
Yeah, basically, I'm talking to back to Hong Kong first, because I recently Hong Kong just released the policy address, and two very important initiatives will be Hong Kong will establish like 30 billion for investment in green, and we have one of the themes to help with on achieving the carbon neutrality by education, by investment, by policy support as well. So it's a very strong support from the Hong Kong government. Okay, and it's in line with China's carbon neutrality targets. And I would like to talk about the EU common ground taxonomy. Basically, is we call CGT, is a report resulting from an in-depth comparison exercise that's put forward areas of commonalities between the EU and China's taxonomies, and this help to common recognitions from both sides investors to invest in those green taxonomies investment, and also do the financing as well. So it's that we have a pretty good progress on that. Yeah.
Great, that's really good to hear. And so Sanjay, you mentioned before, that you expect from policymakers to also do their part, and I was wondering what will be the key changes you see in India that help you as a bank to upscale green finance?
I think regulators have started working on it. As I mentioned earlier, the clean energy, I think one of the focus areas, they have done it, and they are giving a lot of incentives both to the lender that they have to mandatorily do it, and as well as the manufacturers, and as well as end users. If they focus on the other side, from the supply side to the green buildings, I think it will go a long way. I think I don't know if you look at some of the countries in Middle East, for example, Dubai or Singapore, where you mandatory have to have a green building. Now, since it's not mandatory, people are not opting for it. So I would look at from the regulator side, or from the authorities who are approving the building plan, that they must make it mandatory that all buildings which are approved and construction is taken up must be green. I think if that is made mandatory, I don't think people will have a choice. Then obviously you will see the impact of this on the environment directly.
Yes, that's great to hear. Thank you. And so if I circle back to Esther, what I picked up from your presentation that I found very interesting is your first experiences in releasing green bonds and sustainability linked bonds, and there I was wondering, what was your experience on so what I call the enabling environment, and is it actually enabling? How easy was it? How was your exchange with the banks or the financial institutions? And also, did you find that the policy framework was enabling the uptake of green bonds, or were there quite big challenges as well in the process?
Yeah, in every country, I think regulatories, move agenda will be really help to really drive and fast track change. And in Singapore, green finance is actually spearheaded by our Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, and its vision is very clear and consistently all these years is Singapore as an international financial center in Asia. And of course, green financing has been taking the center stage for over the past few years. In 2017 already, there was a green finance action plan to provide grant for green financing and green bond. We are actually, as you know, the bond issuer have to look at formulating a framework and also getting external assurance, and all these will actually incur cost. So MAS actually provided grant to cover all these external assurance cost. And over the years we have also launched the taxonomy and try to standardize on the guidance on and the assessment of green financing. And there are actually quite a lot of help as well in terms of knowledge. There is also the Green Finance Excellence Center to basically to educate bond issuer or potential financier and borrower and lenders to find out to learn more about green financing. And of course, technology can play a huge part in it. And every year we have a fintech conference, and green fintech is actually getting into the mainstream now. Reporting, last but not least, we recently launched Singapore Exchange and MAS code, launched together. We call it the ESG Gnome, which is actually a digital platform to guide listed companies to report on 27 basic very fundamental indicator on ESG, because like you said, if everybody is reporting differently, it's very hard for investor to assess, to compare like for like. So this is a digital platform to help especially those beginners, the listed company, on what to report and how they can actually learn more. So this is a fintech a digital disclosure portal for companies to start reporting with it in a systematic way. Yeah.
Great, that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing. So since we're approaching to the end of the scheduled time for this seminar, I will do a last round. And in that round, I'd like to hear, so with the topic of, collaboration and working with other stakeholders, maybe if you had one wish let's say one free wish on what stakeholder group how can I formulate this? So which stakeholder group would you say is the most important to your business and to your organization, where you think this could unlock a lot of green finance and help you on your journey, so to say? So if I start with Sanjay, so I heard that you say that one of the big challenges you have is on the supply side. So it's maybe difficult to find the projects to finance. And you said also that regulators play an important role there. But maybe not thinking of the regulators, how else do you think you could have more supply on the market to finance sustainable buildings?
I think, as I said, that I think each stakeholder has to play a role, and from the regulator side, probably how they started on the clean energy and how they started working on a housing. Earlier, housing was a challenge, but they worked and they made sure that the policies are framed to ensure that the priority sector housing is taken up. I think similar to that, I feel if they make a mandatory for the banks, lending institution, that they must have certain exposure going to the only green buildings, I think it will help. I think this is one. But even from the developers who have important role, I think you have to also play along with with other stakeholders, and it should not be by choice. I think they must make sure that they plan the building in such a way that the new buildings, even if it is not mandatory, comes as a green building. Because what I understand is from the data that green buildings are not no more expensive now. It is almost at the same cost. It is just that will they need that they will develop with a green building, and I think it will happen. So I don't see very long. Then I think everybody will be on board, and I see a good prospect both from the opportunity to the lender as well as opportunity for investors to come and spend money in India.
Great, thank you so much. Very interesting again. So it's for me also. I have a focus on my work on Europe, so it's great to hear your insights also from a different region. And I think some of the challenges and opportunities are actually also similar. But if I move to back to Dennis again, so I think you maybe work with a lot of different stakeholders in your daily business, but where would you say is, I mean, maybe not just picking one stakeholder group, but also thinking of what type of collaboration efforts can really, bring the sector together and unleash a lot of sums in green finance.
I think if we drive from policy or from the regulator side, from the compliance side, then it's useful, but it's only on the phase one. Market participation and market law will be the long-term promotions effort for green finance. And from that stakeholders group, it includes the investors and also the bankers. And I think one of the important elements will be the financial product innovations. So on one side, they can meet the latest needs of the users, and on the other hand, they can lend out more money or have more investments in green and get the return as well, because nowadays very difficult to find the investment opportunity and generate a decent return given the market is have some turbulence there. Okay, and ultimate goal will be I hope that through the green and sustainable finance can create impacts, not just to avoid the greenwashings. Yeah, that's my sharing.
Great, thank you. And so if I then for a final statement come back to Esther. So, I mean, you have already a lot of positive experience when I hear you talk on green finance. So it's difficult a bit to ask about the challenge and how you can make it better. But maybe if a different type of question, what would be your recommendations maybe to other maybe real estate developers or actors in the real estate sector that are very inspired by what you have shared and want to follow suit and do similar expenditure on expand their business on sustainable buildings and also green bonds, etc. So what would you say, what was really like you said learning by doing, but still what would be your one suggestion?
Thank you, Julie. I think we never stop learning and never stop, continue to reinventing ourselves. And we are just at different stage of the journey and a different stage of level of maturity. But we never stop running, and we want to continue and tap onto sustainability. Now is really the mainstream agenda, and it has never been the business case has never been as strong as today. And research actually projected that is $9.2 trillion a year will be required to support the global transition to net zero. There's huge investment opportunities and also financing opportunity, but what we need is alignment, because I think what we need is what borrowers are really looking at, what they really want from lenders, and lenders what they really how to assess borrowers' criteria. And similarly, ESG investment is fast growing, so there's always a little gap between what investor really want and versus corporate, can report. So I think if we can align that, with the sustainability reporting, ESG, performance, we can actually work together to tap onto the fast-growing financing and use financing and channels to fund action, to accelerate action. And the SDG innovation loan I talk about was actually between CDL and the bank, DBS, that we work together on a framework, and we also source for innovation. So it's a three-way partnership: the lender, the borrower, and also innovators. So we come together and share one goal, that is to decarbonize, the built environment and in the way we manage our property. So when we bring together, ideas and resources, I think we can accelerate the action, because we are really now in a climate emergency. The window, for action is actually getting narrower. So we do need to carry out action that can, create positive impact. There's no time to waste. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all three of you. And maybe as a concluding remark to end this session and this great seminar that we have now for 2 hours, I would, so my main message that I take out of these presentations and this discussion is that the challenge to decarbonize the building sector is quite vast and quite big. There are many risks, but the opportunities are also very great. And the first experiences we've seen now in the Asia Pacific region also, make a very good case that it is doable and there is a lot of benefits to it. And in the end, the opportunities are just there, and everyone should, do their part in grabbing these opportunities and doing their contribution. And it's really great to see how also different actors in the region are readying themselves for the transition, and how there is a lot of energy to make it happen. So thank you everyone for joining, and I will hand back to Joy for the closing. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone. So this is actually the end of this webinar. So again, we concluded that we have to work together. We have to run faster. Like Esther ran very fast on hill as well. You see her in action, right? So no matter how difficult it is, we keep moving and learning. So next month, we'll be moving to the last month of the APN Festival. We'll be starting to showcase the our APN Awards finalists. So there are 15 projects, including 5 companies and 3 business and 3 beautiful women will be sharing about their stories about how they are proceeding with the sustainability. So in that way, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you one more time to our panel. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.